Thank you for joining us. Welcome to LumioStation.
What's up, LumioStation? My name is TheHeatedMo, and welcome to Top 10 Psychic-Type Pokemon. So, let's get started. At number 10, we have Jirachi the Wish Pokemon, and I have to say that Jirachi is my favorite Generation 3 legendary Pokemon. It's always been extremely cool and extremely hard to get, and I remember being a little kid and wanting to pre-order my copy of Pokemon Colosseum to get my hands on it. Not only is it good from a design standpoint and was also rare at the time, it can pack a mean punch in competitive battling. Running Iron Head with Serene Grace has never ceased to initiate rage over the amount of flinch hacks Jirachi gets. It's always been crazy good, at least ever since 4th Gen competitive battling took off. With a base 100 stats across the board, this thing really is a powerhouse, and even 6th Gen competitive battling. And let's not forget it's a Steel type, so any Fairy type Pokemon, and I'm looking at you Mega Gardevoir, will befall from this cute, adorable looking Pokemon that definitely demonstrates size does not matter. At number 9, we have Mew, the new species Pokemon. Now, just like Jirachi, I'm kind of following a pattern of rare Pokemon here, so I promise to change it on the next Pokemon. Mew has been another favorite due to the fact it's almost impossible to actually get legitimately. It was always that Pokemon since 1st generation that everyone wanted as their prized possession, and I remember people going as far as abusing the Mew glitch just to get it. And when I think about it, how did the Mew glitch even get discovered? All the steps are so random anyway. Even then, getting Mew in the 3rd generation games was impossible unless you lived in Japan, or even went to an event in the US, which were pretty rare back in those days. It wasn't until 4th generation that we could actually get Mew from Pokemon Ranch in a Wi-Fi gift. But all the rarity aside, just like Jirachi, it has its charm and battle aspect. Not only do I think this is one of the most adorable Pokemon ever made, it can also be a huge threat, having the ability to learn every move in existence, being that Mew apparently has the genetics of every Pokemon. And with base 100 stats, Mew can be used in several ways, from being an attacker to a bulky threat. I like Mew. It's extremely diverse, and just like Jirachi, displays size does not define strength, at least when it comes to Pokemon. For number 8, I went nuts and chose Delphox. Now, nobody understands Delphox, and it's tossed around as being one of the worst of the 3 Final Evolution starters in the Kalos region. But come on, have people really looked at Chestnut? Wait, I'm getting off topic, that's for another time. Back to Delphox. So, what do I really like about Delphox? It's the fact that it's the first Fire Psychic type starter Pokemon, and it ended the streak of the Fire fighting starters for the past 3 generations. And it's pretty original if you ask me. It's a wizard, witch, depending on how you look at it, and its design isn't even that bad. I think the one is a nice addition to Delphox, and it just seems really majestical. I mean, it really isn't that strong and isn't that competitive, but it can be fun and used through normal gameplay. And it may not have the best stats or the best move pool, but just from personal experience and its design, I really think that Delphox does deserve a spot on this list. It definitely isn't the worst of the 3 starters in the 6th generation, and it doesn't even look that bad. Now for number 7, I decided to go for Latios, the Eon Pokemon. Now my fondest memories of this Pokemon were just wanting to get my hands on it. It just seemed really cool, and when I was a kid playing Pokemon Sapphire, I had to do with Latios, which I mean, it wasn't that bad in my opinion, just I thought Latios was really awesome. It looks amazing, and I don't know what exactly it was supposed to be, but it can pack a mean punch. Back in the early days of 3rd generation, I always read the rules of the Ouray Colosseum in Pokemon XD about how Latios and Latias cannot be used if it had Soul Dew, and I always wondered what that was. Was it supposed to be some sort of Destiny Bond item that would bring its opponent down after the Pokemon was taken down? Or maybe it was something like a choice band. But being a kid, I did not know what it was. It wasn't until years later that I realized Soul Dew was an item obtained from the southern island that the other Lati was holding, and boosted Latias or Latios' special attack and special defense by 50%, if they were holding it of course. And realized the Eon ticket is the rarest and one of the most expensive e-reader cards in existence, and was needed to be scanned in to get the Soul Dew. And things like this really intrigued me about Pokemon. Anything special events or unobtainable just always made something a lot more interesting. But that's just me. Latios to this day is a powerhouse. Just run Psyshock, Surf, Dragon Pulse, and Roost, and you'll be in for a great time. Gardevoir, the Embrace Pokemon. At number 6, Gardevoir defines how amazingly good Psychic-type Pokemon are at being special attackers. I mean, my first time ever seeing one was Wally in Pokemon Sapphire using it. It just seemed really cool looking. Little did I know it was extremely good as a special attacker. Forward 3 generations later, and Gardevoir becomes a powerful Pokemon, both in competitive battling and through normal in-game use. It obtains a Mega Evolution that gives it a Fairy typing, and with Moonblast, this thing will wreck a lot of Pokemon in just a heartbeat. And it also becomes a champion tier Pokemon. And what I mean by that is it's finally been used by a league champion. Though I'm not really a fan of its Mega Evolution, I am a fan of its normal form. It just seems so kick-ass. It just seems so graceful but deadly. It definitely shouldn't be ignored when building teams, as it is a pretty common Pokemon in 6th gen competitive battling, and definitely deserves its spot on this top 10. Number 5, we have one of the best physical Psychic-Type Pokemon, Metagross, the Iron Leg Pokemon. Now honestly, this thing hasn't really been the best ever since the introduction of Fairy types and Steel types being nerfed this generation. But before that, ever since it was released, it was just an amazing Pokemon and was seen on almost every team. Moves like Meteor Mash and Earthquake just displayed how powerful this thing was, and with the introduction of Zen Headbutt and Magnet Rise, this thing was almost unstoppable. Its stats were insane, and for something that seemed to be slow, it was pretty fast. Its speed stat isn't great, but its defense stat definitely made up for it. And with Clear Body as its ability, goodbye Intimidators and any Pokemon that tried to bring down its stats. The only thing that could really do something to its stats were Paralysis and Burn, and being part Steel, not even Toxic Stalling this thing would work. I love Metagross, and Metagross is used by my favorite champion, Steven, as is Ace. If that isn't enough, Metagross, its design is just so badass. It's just this big old badass machine, and definitely deserves to be number 5. And on other people's lists, even higher. Now we all know about Blue's threat in Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, and so on. Exeggutor, the Coconut Pokemon. Now this thing is absolutely overpowered in the first generation, and it's almost as good as another first generation Pokemon. But I'll stop right there. Back in first generation, special attack and special defense were combined. So any special moves, and mind you this is Gen 1, so special moves and physical moves were determined by typing, which is kind of extremely unbalanced depending on how you look at it. This thing could take multiple hits as well as deal massive damage. This thing was definitely something to be worried about, at least back then. Exeggutor over the years though had been nerfed, and it hasn't come back since its nerf on Gen 2. And then when the physical and special split came out in the 4th generation, it really had no recovery. But it is a respectable classic Pokemon. It's a shame though, this thing was pretty awesome, and the Great Blue Oak used him. So what's there not to like about him? Some people may not agree as this being number 4, but in my opinion, with it being so amazing at the beginning of Pokemon, I think it really deserves this spot. Mewtwo, the genetic Pokemon. Oh man, this Pokemon. As being number 3 on the list, it definitely deserves a mention and its spot. Now just like Exeggutor, this thing is quite possibly the most unbalanced Pokemon in the first generation, and even to this day it's still amazing. It's the last Pokemon you can catch in the Kanto region, and it is the hardest to catch in the Kanto region. With a catch rate of 3, catching this thing can range from 1 Ultra Ball to days of resetting to capture it. In Generation 1, you couldn't catch it with a Pokeball regularly either. You had to put it to sleep, or Pokeballs would miss, and dealing with that catch rate multiplier plus missing just goes to show how annoying this thing can really be. Not only that, but Mewtwo is one of the best Pokemon in existence, with it having the highest total base stats when it Mega Evolves, and even before it Mega Evolved, it was 4th in the 5th generation, 2nd in the 4th generation, and 1st from Generation 1 to 3. It packs quite a punch. And like I said earlier, in Generation 1, Special wasn't split, so good luck trying to land a Thunderbolt or a Flamethrower on it. It will just eat it up. It remains uber and will most likely stay that way, because Mewtwo X has Insomnia, so good luck with Dark Void, Darkrai. That thing will perish with 1 Arsphere, by the way. Mewtwo is truly the god of Pokemon. What is an Arceus to a Mewtwo, guys? And now for number 2. Alakazam, the Psy Pokemon. And honestly, the past 2 Pokemon had followed the same Generation 1 special split example. And yes, this also works for Alakazam as well. This thing has been great throughout all 6 generations. An example I always like to use on Alakazam is the Elemental Punches. Before Generation 4, the Elemental Punches were all special moves, so using them was not a bad idea at all, seeing Alakazam has an amazing special attack stat to begin with. And with the introduction of hidden abilities in Generation 5, Magic Guard Alakazam was a godsend. Things like Burn and Toxic were not going to do anything to it, and you could just continuously laugh as you Psyshock, Focus Blast, and Hidden Power everything in its sight. There isn't really much to say about Alakazam because everything I would say has already been said, but it is definitely one of the best Psychic-Type Pokemon ever, and will remain that way. I think you all saw this coming, but the number 1 Psychic-Type Pokemon, in my opinion, is Espeon, the Sun Pokemon. Now, why do I like this thing so much? I mean, when you think about it, it's nothing compared to Mewtwo or Alakazam. So why did I put this at number 1? Well, to be completely honest, it's just my favorite Pokemon of all time. It may not be the greatest or the best Pokemon or even the best Psychic-Type Pokemon for that matter, but there are several things that make this my number 1. Back in Pokemon Crystal, I ran an Espeon. The whole reason for that was I was given Eevee by Bill and evolved into an Espeon, as I would play right after school instead of the nighttime. And that wasn't the height of my love for Espeon. It wasn't until Pokemon XD I saw its true potential, it being a great Pokemon in-game of course. I basically beat Pokemon XD with Espeon and Ursaring, and that was my team. Moves like Psychic and Bite in that generation on an Espeon just seemed amazing, and I have no clue why. And then getting into competitive battling with Espeon in 5th gen really sparked my love for Espeon. It knowing Magic Bounce just made it so trolly, and I'm kind of that guy, you know, I just love pissing people off. Its design also just gives it such a great charm. It just looks awesome. I don't really have any words for Espeon, I just love its design, I love its move pool, I love its cry, I love everything about Espeon. and to this day it remains my mascot, and will forever remain that way. If for whatever reason it just becomes bad competitively or overall in the next generations to come, I won't really care, and that's just how it's gonna be. I don't really know what makes it my favorite, to be honest, but I can say this: I love Espeon. Well guys, that's it for my top 10 Psychic-Type Pokemon, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to see more content on LumioStation. And don't forget to leave a comment with your top 10 Psychic-Type Pokemon. They could be opinionated, statistical, however you want it. And on LumioStation, we do post Let's Plays, Wi-Fi battles, and other variety of content. In fact, we just finished our Crystal Tag Lock, so you can watch all of that right now after this video. But until then guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been TheHeatedMo, and I guess you could check out my channel. You don't have to. I just hope you guys enjoyed this video, and check out LumioStation. This has been TheHeatedMo, and I'll see you guys next time.